Howdy folks, welcome to FoundFlix and a new edition of Ending Explained. This time we'll be looking at the recently released Happy Death Day, the time loop slasher film from genre masters Blumhouse. If you have any other video suggestions or endings you want explained, I'd love to hear them. Send them my way on the social media platform of your choosing at FoundFlix. Happy Death Day is kind of a whodunit with lead character Teresa trying to learn who is killing her and to prevent her own death. And that's probably the biggest question in the story. Who is trying to kill her and why? But there's a lot of other questions left unresolved in the end as well, so let's look at the film, breaking down the important story beats to help understand the ending. Our story begins in a dorm room the morning after a hard night of partying where we meet Teresa, who goes by Tree. She wakes up in a stranger's bed, Carter, who she is dismissive and rude to before leaving. This is very indicative of Tree's personality, and it's seen throughout her day at school that Tree is not a very nice person. She's cold, uncaring, and insulting to pretty much everyone she encounters. Today is also her birthday, which normally someone would be excited about, but Tree has a good reason not to be. She and her deceased mother share the same birthday. So ever since her mother's death 3 years ago, Tree's birthday has been darkened by this tragic event. That's why she repeatedly blows off her dad's calls throughout the day to meet. She doesn't want her birthday to be about wallowing in the misery of the past. And it's her mother's death that also caused Tree to turn into the biatch that she is now, as she specifically mentions at one point considering what her mom would think of her change in behavior. And now Tree is going to be forced to deal with her issues head on thanks to a strange unexplained event, a time loop that causes her to relive the day of her birthday over and over, with each day ending in her murder at the hands of a babyface masked killer. The babyface for some reason being the mascot for the college, the Babies, okay? After we see more of Tree's day, including having a relationship with her married Professor Gregory, insulting others in her sorority, and throwing away the cupcake that was handmade for her birthday by her roommate Lori, which she rejects in every iteration of the loop. While walking alone at night, Tree walks through a tunnel, then the baby mask killer for the first time appears behind her and she manages to escape at first, but eventually Tree is stabbed to death, only for her to awake back in Carter's bed on the same morning of her birthday, our first instance of the loop, which resets after Tree's death to her back to the beginning of the day. She's confused and more than a little freaked out about what happened, but chalks it up to simply being deja vu. She tries to avoid being killed a few more times and does avoid the bridge on day 2, bypassing the original encounter. But at her surprise party later that evening, the killer still shows up, killing Tree with a broken bong. Now realizing that she is indeed trapped in a loop, Tree wants to find out who is killing her and explains her situation to Carter, who after considering the situation realizes Tree has unlimited lives to find out her killer's identity. She can make a list of potential suspects and narrow them down each time she goes through the loop. He believes that the killer may be specifically targeting Tree on her birthday, but that won't really narrow down the suspects, as her sorority sister Danielle told the entire school about her surprise party later that night. But there are a few major suspects she does investigate. First, Tim, which Tree stopped responding to text messages from after one date, but she discovers that he is secretly gay. Then Stephanie, but she spots Stephanie at the same time as she is about to be drowned by the killer. And then Danielle, but she ends up dying on her own after the two get hit by a bus. After crossing off those names, Tree considers that Gregory might be the killer. When she goes to see Gregory, the killer kills him, so it isn't him in the mask either. Interestingly, when Tree looks for him at the hospital, she gets an x-ray done, and it's revealed that her body has sustained major internal damage after her many deaths, and by all understanding should be dead. So even though the day and all the events around her are looping, Tree herself physically is not, and has been injured further with each kill, and is running out of time before all of her deaths will cause her to stay dead. While she and Carter are at a burger joint, they see a news report on TV about serial killer Joseph Toombs, who is currently at the local hospital. A killer specifically known for going after young women. Well, that sure sounds like our guy. And Tree believes she has finally found her killer and can stop him and the loop for good. But by the time they get to the hospital, Toombs has already escaped. And while protecting Tree, Toombs snaps Carter's neck. Tree manages to take down Toombs, but realizes that if she doesn't reset the day, that Carter will stay dead. So she runs to the bell tower, hanging herself before Toombs can catch up to her, promising to find him soon. On the next loop, Tree's attitude is markedly different now that she believes she is finally almost out of the loop, and has a much more positive energy, treating those differently she encountered throughout her many days. Like in the courtyard, warning the students beforehand about the sprinklers turning on, making amends with Tim, telling him to embrace who it really is, and breaking up with Gregory. She also finally meets up with her father for the first time in any loop, admitting it's been hard to be around him since her mom died. But they make amends with Tree apologizing for hurting him. Later, Tree prepares for her battle with Toombs at the hospital, and after using the blackout, which she knows will occur every day at 9:23, is able to shoot Toombs dead. She and Carter spend the rest of the night together, and they eat the cupcake Lori made for her, blowing out the candle and making a wish. However, she wakes up the next morning still on Monday the 18th. And still trapped in the loop. But she killed Toombs, so how did that happen? She figures it out when she heads back to her room and is again offered the cupcake by Lori. It was only in the last loop that she actually ate the cupcake and then mysteriously somehow died. That's because the cupcake was poisoned, killing Tree in that previous loop. And so we know now that it's her roommate Lori who is the babyface killer, and even though the cupcake didn't work until the last loop, Lori still managed to kill Tree over and over again. Lori works at the hospital where Toombs is being held, and her plan was to frame Toombs for Tree's murder and aided in his escape because of course people would believe it was an escaped killer with a penchant for young women that killed Tree versus her seemingly sweet roommate. As far as her motive and the cause of all of Tree's troubles, it all boils down to the fact that a guy liked Tree more than her. After hearing this, Tree says, and I think we all agree that it's a pretty stupid motive. To add a bit more to her case, Lori also offers that Tree is a dumb bitch. Well, that is a very strong argument. Very well developed. I think the point or gag here is to make the motive something ridiculous and mundane on purpose. It's more about Tree's personal journey than the reason she was being hunted. The two fight and Tree manages to grab the poisoned cupcake, shoving it into Lori's mouth, and then swings off a ceiling lamp, kicking her out of the window, sending Lori to her death. So she's done it. She's finally become a decent human being and took out the person who has been trying to kill her in this endless loop of death. Does that mean the day will finally move forward? Tree wakes up the next morning, hearing the same birthday ringtone that greeted her every time she reset the loop. But luckily this time it's just Carter pulling a prank, telling her it's Tuesday the 19th. Hooray, she made it out, and the two kiss, now able to live in their happy existence together. But what caused the loop in the first place? What could be behind it? The movie never goes into any detail about why it is that time is looping or what caused it, because the real core of the story in this situation is causing Tree to confront herself and her feelings over her mother's death, and grow as a result into a nicer person. Similar to the motive being inane, the reasoning behind the loop isn't important to the story being told. But if we dig a little deeper into things, and this is stuff the movie never really mentions, clearly to me the time loop is some kind of cosmic event or temporal rip tied directly to Tree, because the entire world and people presumably resets every time she starts another day. Everyone except for her. So Tree must essentially be the reason this day is repeating itself. And considering that the death of her mother, who shares the same birthday, had such a major impact for Tree, causing even her personality to change, it makes sense that it was her mother that somehow caused the loop from beyond the grave. I know it probably sounds completely ridiculous, but it makes sense that if her deceased mother could somehow see that Tree was going to be murdered on her birthday, she was somehow by God or something given the chance to have her daughter repeat that fateful day over and over as a kind of test until she got it right, and eventually evolve as a person. Like I said, the movie never goes into any of this, but it's one line of crazy thinking that I had when putting the whole thing together. And in a recent interview, the director mentioned that his planned take for a potential sequel would be very different than what we would expect. So maybe it will go further in and develop the time loop and the reasoning behind it. But again, the real point here is Tree's journey, and the time loop is merely the facilitator for it to happen. Alright guys, that'll do it for my ending explained on Happy Death Day. What did you guys think of the movie and its ending? What do you think of a more cosmic-centric sequel? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.